Welcome to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the Pulp Net, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Learn more about the pulp magazines through articles, blogs, bibliographies, links, over 100 episodes of this podcast, and much more at thepulp.net. In this Pulp Event podcast, artists Don Simpson, Mark Schultz, and Mark Wheatley discuss illustrating Robert E. Howard's Conan the Barbarian for books and magazines. The presentation was part of a celebration of 90 years of the great pulp heroes. This podcast was recorded on August 4th at PulpFest 2023 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Don begins.
Thank you for being here. My name is Donald Simpson, and I'm an exhibitor at the show. And I'm completely superfluous to the panel because I've never illustrated Conan for the commercial market, but our two featured speakers certainly have. Mark Schultz, I got to know him. He was being published by my publisher, Kitchen Sink Press, doing a series called Xenozoic Tales, or Xenozoic Tales, also known as Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and is the longtime author of Prince Valiant in the Sunday papers, many other projects in between. To my left and to my far left is Mark Wheatley, who I also got to know in the 80s in the independent comics boom. He was collaborating with another Mark, Hempel, on a series for First Comics called Mars.
I only work with Marks.
Mark, and Mark. And he's done numerous projects since then, Frankenstein Mobster and a number of, ERB covers and so forth, and Grace Bros covers. So when Mike Chomko asked me to moderate, the first thing that I thought of was, of all the adventure characters that I read as a teenager, the one that I might be most intimidated to illustrate would have been Conan, because of the caliber of great illustrators. And this did not hinder these two gentlemen at all.
Maybe a little.
That's what ego is for.
Yeah. So let's. I guess we're going to start with you talking about exactly what you did with Conan, how it came about. Were you approached? Did you try out? Was this a lifelong ambition? How did this? Fill us in on that part first.
Well, Mark, you're up. So
Did I go first?
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I discovered Robert E. Howard's work in general through reading Richard Lupoff's Edgar Rice Burroughs' Master of Adventure. He recommended, if you liked the Tarzan stories, he says Conan is not Tarzan. He's not a ripoff of Tarzan, but he obviously was inspired by Burroughs' success. And I that combined with the Frank Frazetta covers on many of the paperbacks was enough to get me on board, and it didn't take long for me to quickly differentiate between the pastiches and Robert E. Howard's, original works of Conan.
How old would you have been?
I've been 13, I think, when I
Perfect
started.
age.
14, yeah, that's the age you got to get it. Now, the nice thing about Howard, though, is he was a real good writer. I mean, he was a great wordsmith as well as a great storyteller, and in my opinion, his writing holds up very well. Some stuff I read as a kid doesn't hold up as well as an adult, but Howard's work just kind of gets better. But anyway, I always loved the idea of being able to illustrate Conan. Didn't think it was going to happen, and then I was offered a job with Wandering Star, the English publisher that was doing the original versions of the stories that Howard wrote, not the stories that had been adapted by other writers.
What year would that have been, and what stage of your career?
Oh, that was early 2000s. I was asked to be on board with this book, and it was the middle of my career. I'd actually gone away from illustration for several years. I was writing Superman, and that was taking up the bulk of my time and income. So it was kind of intimidating just on that level alone to get back to illustrating. But also, I think the number one thing anyone doing Conan these days, and I think Mark will probably agree, is, as Don alluded to, you got to get over the notion that Frank Frazetta represents the be-all and end-all of what Conan can be. It certainly is a powerful, extremely powerful version of Conan, that has been incredibly influential. But if you read Howard's stories, you read the Conan stories, it's just one aspect. What Frazetta did so well is just one aspect of Conan. And in this piece, which was my original kind of based on my model sheets for the book I was going to illustrate, I wanted to show the idea that Conan was not just a berserk warrior who was scowling all the time, but he was I was hoping to get a feeling of command, someone you'd trust and go into battle with.
What was your process? So you get this assignment. What was your process to go back and read?
Yeah.
To look at particular.
Yep. I had a set number of stories I was charged with illustrating in the book, so I went through those and I made copious notes on various scenes that I thought would work well as illustrations.
And what kind of research, aside from the material, do you like? Your broad axe collection, your shield collection. What do you look at? What in classical history, for example?
Howard stories are based on his interpretation of different historical periods. So I did do some research on that. I did model shoots with people, actual humans I know who were patient enough to. And I actually had that sword. I had a sword maker make an actual broadsword for me to use.
Wow.
So that was fun.
Have you ever fought with a broadsword?
No. I'd last maybe 10 seconds before it'd be exhausted.
I lasted about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Robin and Marion with Sean Connery and the fight with at the end where they're just exhausted hacking away at each other? There's nothing romantic about it. That's pretty much, I think, what the closest to reality. It's not Conan, but that,
Yeah. The real sword fight.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you found in your research, going back to those stories that you felt had not been brought out by previous illustrators? Was that a goal, or was it more important just continuity and not sticking out? Or
that's a complex question. Jeez. Give me an easy one. I think that's all in the back of my mind. I'm just kind of trying to overcome my own fear, and that it's not going to be presentable at all in my version. So there's a lot of give and take, showing it to other people, getting other people's opinions. There's a lot of showing it to the editors, making sure that they were happy with what I was doing. Preliminary work. So. Yeah.
Is it just the tradition, all those big name illustrators, that in itself is just daunting, I would imagine?
Yeah, it is. And it's the whole history of illustration of this type of story. I mean, as much as I'm intimidated by the notion of Frank Frazetta, I'm intimidated by N.C. Wyeth, too, who did great, warrior-type armored illustrations. So, yeah, it's just...
You did okay. You did all right.
Well, thank you. If you say so. I'm still debating that.
I would have choked, so, all right.
Yeah. Oh, this
is another one of Mark's.
Oh, yeah.
This is Queen of the Black Coast.
Yeah, and we'll see. This is going to be an example of how...
We both did the same scene.
Right, from the same story. And this was my interpretation of the climatic scene from Queen of the Black Coast.
Right. This was not done for the book, though. Was this a private commission, or what was this?
This was done for a role-playing game.
Oh, okay.
Mordefius, which I think is out of England. I forget now. It was done 10 years ago, maybe. But now this, as opposed to the previous piece, which was an oil piece, this is watercolor, and touched up a bit with wolf pencil, which is a carbon pencil to kind of unify the colors and tighten up details. But the format is because it's a wraparound cover. So what you see on the left half of the piece is on the back cover of the book, and what you see in the right half is what you'd actually see on a shelf looking at it with the title across the top.
Right, so then we have this. And this was a piece that I did, it was a private commission for the curator up at the Norman Rockwell Museum. And this was his favorite Conan story, and he asked me to do the illustration for him. And my take on this was, when I'm illustrating a story, any story, the man who gave me my first professional art lesson was Kelly Freeze, and he drummed it into me in each lesson that he gave me that he would read the story for enjoyment, then he would read the story and make notes, and then he would read the story and make notes. He would at least do it 3 times, and if he felt the need, he would go back and read sections later. And every time he would make notes or highlight things in the story, so he would, but he always insisted you read it the first time for enjoyment, because you want to bring what any reader would bring to it, the enthusiasm and fulfillment of that. So I read the story a number of times, and everybody has tended to go to an ape with wings that has illustrated this, but he never actually describes it as an ape in the story. It's more of a monstrous simian-type creature, and so I pushed it more into a horrific monster sort of look for my own approach.
And I'm just going to say, that's interesting, because when I was a kid reading Howard stuff, the Conan, I thought, man, there's so much description in there. I can see everything. The author is giving me everything. But then you go back as an adult and read it, and no, he leaves a lot to your individual imagination. And so, like Mark and I interpret it in very different ways.
And most of his description really goes to mood and place and action.
Yes.
So you're coloring it yourself. You're filling in a lot of the details. So anyway, my personal influence for Conan comes from, I would say Roy Krenkel really established the Hyborian Age, and his influence on those Frazetta paintings is extremely important. Frazetta's style and action and just virility is, extremely important. But then from there, by then, Frazetta led me to the Brandywine illustrators, and I fell in love with the Brandywine illustrators. N.C. Wyeth is probably top of the list, but Howard Pyle and Schoonover and all of them, True, and I mean, there's so many. So by the time I get to doing my Conan, I'm distilling all of that, plus I really like mid-century illustrators who were doing illustrations for magazines, and so they tend to be more brushy and less blendy. And so I use a bolder brushstroke. I like to see a strong brushstroke in what I do, and I think that brings action to things. It gives you more, it involves the viewer more, because you have to blend things in your mind when you look at it. At least that's what I'm hoping. That's how I respond to it when I look at it.
Let me bring it back to the question I asked Mark Schultz. Mark Wheatley, how old were you when you discovered Conan?
13, 14, something like that. Yeah.
So you didn't start with the R-rated kind of stuff that Conan was. Now, so you said this was a private commission.
It was. It will be printed in my next project, which will start soliciting on Kickstarter on the 18th of this month, and it's called Nucleus, and if you want to know more about it, you can stop by my table. But this will be printed there. Also, this is a digital painting. I've developed my own brushes, my own approach, but it started as a pen and ink rendering with line art more in the style of, say, Joseph Clement Call, or maybe Gibson, or it's got a lot of lines in it. So he wanted that, and I like doing things in color, and so I turned it into a color painting, and he also got a large, oversized canvas print of the digital painting to go along with it. And it's framed and hanging in his foyer in his home now. I've kind of lost where I was going with that. But anyway, there is an original line art piece that'll also be printed in the magazine, and you can compare and contrast. Oh, actually, you can do it that way. There it is. I forgot I had it in there.
Now, both of you mentioned Frazetta and kind of, in a sense, implying that you want to go before, kind of like the pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, kind of pre-Frazetta, going back to an even more primal interpretation. You want to kind of get to the place where you're seeing the character through your own innocent eyes, not through these filters. How does that? Is that a fair statement? Was that part of your?
I think it's you're trying to bring
nothing against Frazetta per se,
no. But you don't want to. There's way too many people that just ape Frazetta, and of course you're just aping someone. You're not doing it well. But I think we both, you try to bring your own vision to it, And I think both of us pay a lot of attention to the illustrators that inspired Frazetta, and some that didn't inspire Frazetta. And you just, you know.
So you mentioned Pyle and Krinkle. And
When I was a kid, I wanted to be Frazetta. My signature originally was an imitation of Frazetta's signature.
Mine too.
But it's evolved on its own and it's become the thing. But the thing of it is that if you want to be Frazetta, then you have to go back and be influenced by the things that influence Frazetta. You don't want to be influenced by Frazetta, you want to be influenced by what influenced Frazetta. So in the course of that, though, I branched off because I was more interested in other people. I'm not Frazetta. I don't have his personality. I don't have his interests. So I followed off other paths, so it led me to a different form of expression. But I would say reading Howard, pure Howard, if you forget Frazetta, I think Krinkle is much more on the nose for the world and the people and the look. But I just can't discard the sheer power and virility that Frazetta brought to it. I think if you read enough Howard, you feel that same element is in his work, but it's not necessarily the way Frazetta brought it to it. Now, here's a section that's pretty much a run on Mark's work, so I'm going to let him.
Oh, good Lord.
Just let me know when you want to move on.
Well, this is interesting. This was an oil piece that was done for, again, the Conan the Samaria Wandering Star book that was reprinted by Del Rey. But this is a neat evolution, and just thinking of what you were saying about brushwork, the sketch I did, the preliminary for this involved a lot more detail on the bottom portion. It was just a pool of this is a story, the pool of the black one.
Okay.
So I wanted a black pool at the bottom, but man, I couldn't make it work. So
there's a lot of black titles. It's hard to keep them straight.
So sometimes when we artists are at a loss of how to make something work, you resort to lots of mist, lots of smoke. So those were big fat brush strokes there because I couldn't make it work, and I didn't have to worry about making his feet fit on the ground the right way too. It's the old trick of using something to obscure the hardest, most difficult things to make work. N.C. Wyeth did that too. It's not just, so this evolved quite a bit, but this kind of was the, this is the atypical, or not atypical, the typical girl in distress, Conan rushing to protect her type of deal, which has been admittedly done to death, but it actually happens in this story. The girl also rescues Conan at one point, so it balances out nicely.
Now, just a technical question. You paint with paint and the art supplies. Have you tried digital?
I finally, last year, I taught myself to color digitally over my black line work. So, but no.
Comic book cartoon illustration?
Yeah, right. Just to fill in the spaces. But I'm still a old-fashioned do-it-by-hand guy. This is done with brush and India ink, which is the medium I'm most comfortable with. But this was an illustration of Conan again for that Wandering Star package.
Now, some of your line work clearly that the lower bicep on the left arm is that's Frazetta.
Oh,
you
sure.
Studied Frazetta and all
muscles.
the EC guys.
And the people that influenced Frazetta. Frazetta too, his physique that just epitomized by his illustrations of Conan. He was looking at early bodybuilders like Eugene Sandow, who predated the modern look, the Arnold Schwarzenegger look, which is the inverted triangle, huge pecs and shoulders and stuff, which isn't really reflective of how a working person or a warrior, the muscles that they need to do their job effectively. They need a real strong midsection, big wrists and forearms to do the kind of work with their tools. So I try to get my physique to kind of reflect that, as opposed to what kind of became standard in the wake of the Schwarzenegger movie, is that body by Nautilus look, which has nothing to. It's an aesthetic look. It's not a practical
It
look.
screams fake to me. Every time
It
I
looks
see
fake, yeah. So that was, and Frazetta did that very well. Again, looking back at the early bodybuilders who were essentially working men that just cut down on their body fat.
Now I see in his face here something different than you had in the portrait that was up first. The portrait, the color portrait, was a very sensitive sort of look to his face, and the Barbarian is definitely in this one. Is this a conscious difference?
I guess, but you need to do again, trying to show different aspects of Conan's personality.
Yeah.
Here he's supposed to look, driven. He's on a mission here.
Yeah.
He's coming to get whatever, the point of view is of the reader.
He's coming to get us.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm seeing certain kind of Egyptian, pseudo-Egyptian motifs in certain architecture.
Oh, sure.
So how do you? There's room for invention, obviously, because this is predating Greece and Rome and Egypt and all civilization as we know it. How do you go about?
Well, Howard used those things. Those are real civilizations as templates for his imaginary Hyborian age, like Stygia was Egypt. So
But you get to invent like a capital and things that.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just meandering around until something comes together that looks halfway decent. And sometimes it's actually doing research on the internet. And boy, oh boy, let me tell you, back in the day when I had to go to the library, we all had to go to the library to find what we could. And now you can just find a gazillion images in the snap of a finger online.
Yep, big difference.
But this is a brush and ink piece as well. And again, not any particular story, just kind of an iconic Conan scene. Howard loved to write giant snakes. So.
Are you approaching, now, before you paint something, are you approaching your preliminaries in kind of a black and white state first?
Yes.
Not as detailed as this, obviously, or finished as this, but
But I'm trying to work out in my preliminaries the design of the piece, where to place the blacks against the whites to draw your eye, hopefully to the most. If I've done my job right, your eye goes first to Conan's face and head and then follows the snake around down to the girl and stuff. But it's right. When I do my preliminaries in pencil, I'm just trying to work out a strong design, and then I get the details worked in later. I picked up a great couple pieces today for preliminaries. A salt pepper, great illustration.
I looked at those.
Just little, but just beautifully worked out. Pencil pieces.
Well, something like that previous image. I mean, I'm used to seeing your comic book pages, and you would do open, borderless panels as well. But a lot of your standalone illustrations could just kind of fade off into the whiteness.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just that feels right for a piece, and other times I want to.
This is
a bordered, an edge to things. Trying to capture in this piece Howard would write these great scenes with Cyclopean temples. They use the word Cyclopean a lot. Cyclopean stones. So I was just trying to capture that just massive interior feel of a temple.
How did you get the mist to flow right behind the characters to frame them in whiteness? But then you have the.
Isn't it nice the way mist works for you sometimes? Yeah, again, that was all worked out. That's stuff that I work out in the preliminary stage on a preliminary piece, so I don't have to worry so much about it in the finish. This is an illustration for the first chapter of The Rogues in the House, where Conan is angry at an ex-girlfriend and he carts her off to dump her in the sewer.
Nice pussy.
I added the cat.
Sorry.
But he could have killed her, and he didn't. He killed her boyfriend, her new boyfriend, but he just dumps her in the.
He's a barbarian with ethics.
With ethics, right?
This is a classic scene.
Tower of the Elephant, of course. And again, these black and white pieces are all brush and ink. I'm seldom very happy when I get done with a piece. I'm always seeing everything I didn't do right. But I gotta say, one of the things that still makes me happy is that vase in the foreground. I am happy with the way that turned out to this day. And I can't take it, but sometimes something channels through you and it just works out. I have no rationale for why that.
Did you have a
turned out.
model for the vase?
For the vase?
Yeah.
No, not exactly. I was looking at some of Muka's vases and stuff. His Art Nouveau type of shapes, but
How much does a Grecian earn?
yeah.
Now your brush and ink seem to have a little more Frazetta flavor to my eye, and your paintings seem to have a little more pile. Do you feel you have?
That's fair. I think that's fair. Yeah.
All I see is Dan Smith.
Well, Dan Smith was the guy who introduced me to a technique called dry brush, which is you take your
Is it a split brush?
split brush.
Okay.
You intentionally, instead of having a point on your brush, you intentionally split the hairs, and you can drag it and have just these very almost painterly effects with ink. And I used it a lot in this piece to get the background stuff happening. But yeah, but down, you're right. I think there's a lot of the ink line stuff I have incorporated in my work that came straight from Frazetta, yeah.
You know the piece that Frazetta did illustrating that Earth core thing where the wolves are coming and the guy's being drug up
Yes.
into the tree?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an echo of the composition.
Maybe the way and put spotting the blacks too. There's
Yeah.
a lot of great black spotting in
Yeah.
that piece.
Great character too. That Yag, I can't pronounce the
Yag
name.
Sozov?
Yeah, something. Yag.
That's
We'll just
what-
call him Yag. Anyway, he is a great character.
That's an important Conan story because Conan starts it, it's a teenager in the story. He starts the story as someone who, the guy in a bar makes fun of him, so he kills the guy. You know, for making fun of him, essentially. And by the end of the story, he's doing a very empathetic thing to help this completely alien being.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a real important, one of the most important Conan stories. You see his character evolve and start to become the person who would become a leader and eventually king. And that's a great thing. Another great thing, why I love Howard so much, their meritocracy is the story. The guy comes from nothing, and he built it. He's not like turns out to be a prince, you know, or something in the
Right,
end. He's
yeah.
just a regular son of a blacksmith who is a real American type of Horatio Alger type of story. It's the Frost Giant's daughter. The tale of ultimate sexual frustration. This is another brush and ink, and this one just wasn't working because essentially there's two elements in this that are important. The girl rising up and Conan reaching for her. And those two elements just balanced out each other too much, and it just needed something. And finally I figured out I could put his sword stuck in the snow in the foreground, which creates a third element. And those three elements keep your eye moving around the picture. And without that sword, it just doesn't work. It didn't work, and I think that brought it all together.
Your black and white design, though, is almost a yin and yang.
That's what good black and white should be, right?
Yeah,
It's grand. You don't have all the tonal subtleties you do in paint. And this is another angry Conan I think these are vampire Vikings or something. And again, this has nothing to do with Howard. This is for a comic book cover.
Well, there we go.
And this is on the left is the original Wandering Star edition of Conan the Cimmerian. On the right is the Del Rey, thank you, version of that. And both those paintings are brush and oil paintings. The one on the left was, if you know the Schoonover, the pirate, Blackbeard the pirate,
Oh, yeah.
holding up the torch.
Yeah.
That was kind of the inspiration for that.
Really?
one.
Okay. Yeah. You did a better job.
Oh, I love Schoonover.
Yeah, I
Oh
think.
man.
All right. Well, I guess we're into my stuff. So this is one of my commissioned Conan pieces. Get this one out of the way. I was asked to do the official Robert E. Howard Foundation Christmas card this year, and so Conan is all wrapped up for Christmas. Anyway, let's see. Here's a more serious approach. So this is a cover I did for the foundation, which is planned to be the cover for the next edition of Blood and Thunder, which is Mark Finn's biography of Robert E. Howard. And so I put all his characters, prime characters anyway, into a group, and Texas Bob is there in the foreground. But for Conan, I really, would have loved to have seen the face that I always think of is Jack Palance.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's really what I was going for there. I mean, the other characters, I don't know if you can identify them or not, but they should be obvious to anybody who's read a lot of Howard.
I know a lot of artists who always say Charles Bronson for Conan.
Yeah, well,
but
the personality.
I always argue Jack Palance.
Yeah, he's got the right bone structure.
Yeah,
he was flabby. He wasn't the right body, but he had the right face.
I met Palance when he was in his 80s. He'd written a poetry book, and he lived not far in northeastern Pennsylvania, and in his 80s, and he was still as big as a tree.
Wow.
Huge guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this is a little closer look. So you can
nice.
really,
yeah.
And this is digital too, right?
Oh yeah.
Fantastic.
Do you still oil paint for collectors?
I never really oil painted. I love wash. Wash is my medium of choice. It paints like oils, but dries real quick.
Yeah, that's what I'm using.
I'm a fast painter. I'm if I make a mistake, I paint over it and I keep moving. So oils don't suit
And
me.
digital dries very fast.
It does. Yeah.
Mark, did you pose for that Conan for yourself?
Yeah, Jack
they all
Palance
post
did.
for their
So this is the cover I did for the foundation for the third volume of the collected letters of Robert E. Howard. This had to be licensed from Conan Properties, and since the foundation had no budget to license it, the deal was that they would own my image if I did it. And since the foundation doesn't pay much, it was like, well, all right, I get to do Conan, I'll do one.
Well, let me ask you, now they approached Mark Wheatley. Did they heard of you? Did you try out for this? How did that
Okay, so
come
I did a
about?
book called Songs of Giants, which was my volume illustrating poetry by Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs, and H.P. Lovecraft. And that book won the Robert E. Howard Foundation Award for Best Publication that
What year
year.
are we talking?
And
What year?
19, I think. No. Yeah, 19, I think. Yeah, 19. Paul Herman, who heads up the organization, when he saw me before the book came out, when I was still pushing the Kickstarter for it, he saw me at Windy City and walked over and he said, you do realize that not all of Howard's poetry is in the public domain. And I said, yes. Paul's a lawyer. I said, yes, I do. That's why I commissioned a search at the Library of Congress to cover my ass. And he said, ooh, would you like to work for us? And that started the thing. That was it.
Mark, I wanted to ask you, what program do you use for your painting?
A little program known as Photoshop.
You Photoshop, yes.
For a long time, I worked in Corel Painter as well to get the more brushy, wet paint and all that sort of stuff. But they kept making their program more difficult to use, and Photoshop kept improving the quality of their brushes. And I started creating some of my own brushes. And after a while, it was like switching back and forth between the two just was like a waste of time, and I just do everything in Photoshop.
Okay.
I work very large. That's one of the digital secrets. Is my files are gigabytes. I mean, I'll work maybe 20 gigabytes on a file, and they're also big enough to be printed, the size of a backdrop back here at 300 dpi. So,
Do they give you some kind of layout what the text is going to be on the back cover?
I do all the design work myself. I don't let anybody mess with my stuff anymore. Everybody screws it up. I mean, there was a time when companies thought it was worthwhile to pay a designer who was good, and, had a background, knew what they were doing. These days, they just think anybody can throw a title on something. I've got a font. Here we go. We've got a design. So anyway, I've studied typography and design and all sorts of stuff. I was an art director for the Virginia Department of Agriculture for 3 years, and I got all this stuff. I was a printer. So anyway, Frost Giant's Daughter. This is the cover for Swords of the North, coming out this next year from the Robert E. Howard Foundation. Since I didn't actually show Conan, we did not have to license this one, and the story itself is in the public domain. So, and she's not really naked, so you can put her on the cover. And again, this is a wraparound cover. All the covers that I designed for the Ultimate Edition of the books. By the way, I should point out, all of these books are called the Ultimate Editions because since the original editions were done by the Foundation, which are all very authentic, very heavily researched books, they've found more manuscripts, more original source materials. So all these books are being expanded, and since they don't believe they'll ever find anything again, they've decided these will be the final benchmark books. This will be the authority. This is a piece I did for a television production company that is looking to make a mini-series out of People of the Black Circle. It is a public domain story, which is why they believe they can do it. But Conan is a trademarked name, so they are not including Conan in the story. Instead, the main character is Turlough O'Brien, which is another one of Howard's characters. And they asked me to create a more distinctive, different look than Conan for this, but still keep it, So,
Yeah. Now you're working in the ink.
This is brush, pen, and ink, yes, on board. And then they did want a color piece, so that's what I painted over that in Photoshop.
Do your preliminaries start on paper before you?
I do all my layouts in digital. I draw the original thing digitally, so it's constantly being rearranged until I like it, and then I go print it out and I ink it, and then it gets scanned back in, and then it gets painted.
Do you do your drawings in Photoshop as well? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
you don't use Illustrator.
I work the exact same way Al did, except that it's digital.
Okay.
Everything's got overlays, it moved a little bit, size changes, everything until I get it exactly the way I want it. And the script for the miniseries, by the way, is remarkably faithful to the original material, but it's working from the public domain version of the story. They have discovered an original manuscript before the publication in Weird Tales that is about 30 pages longer with more action and more scenes, and that is going to be published soon through the Foundation. And unfortunately, because I was busy, they gave some other guy the job to illustrate it. So, this is my take on King Conan. And I know people have pointed out that he'd be fried if he was really being struck by a lightning bolt, but it's a mystical lightning bolt. And that's his queen there. So Zenobia, right?
Zenobia.
Yeah. And he's much older, and he's got a beard. And as Mark proved, he can grow hair on his face.
It's going to be a cover. A cover, right?
It was done entirely for my own interest. It wasn't for anything, but it will be appearing in my new project, Nucleus, which will be solicited through Kickstarter beginning the 18th. And that's it, right there. And this is another piece that looks like it should be Conan, but it isn't. It's actually a character I created called the Ghost Warrior, which will be in Nucleus, which will be premiering on Kickstarter on the 18th. And if you all had phones, you could scan that code, or you can stop by my table to get more information. And then here, if you want to know more about Mark's work, you should go to the Flesk site online, Flesk Publications. Mark, you want to talk a little bit about your books?
Well, on the right is Cenozoic, my kind of Hallmark series that Don mentioned earlier.
You're working for Hallmark Cards?
Hallmark, yeah. Don't confuse the people. They don't
I'm
know.
sorry.
Congratulations on the new job.
Well,
You would make some great Hallmark cards.
Robert Crumb started working for American Greeting.
That's
I think.
true.
Yeah,
Yes.
so there you go. Strange bedmates.
Yeah.
Anyway, Xenozoic collects my Xenozoic stories that Don had alluded to earlier, that I started back in the 80s. I am working on a new, after years of letting it lay fallow, I'm working on a new Xenozoic graphic novel right now. And on the left, oh, don't do that until it's done. Don't encourage me. And on the left is Storms at Sea, a novella I wrote, heavily illustrated novella, and I'm working on a sequel to that as well.
I was living at Kitchen Sink Press at the time. Now you sent like a giant box. Was that a big cardboard box?
No, I just sent
I remember the art director Pete Poplaski and Dennis Kitchen just pouring over this guy's stuff, and I was like,
When I sent in the first stories, probably it came in. But remember, back in those days, we sent things by UPS. I mean, you didn't have to; you were there, but.
yeah.
But UPS was the preferred method back in those days. So yeah, that's two of the things I'm working with. And my publisher is Flesh Publications. FleshPublications.com will take you to not only books available, but also a gallery of my art for sale.
And if you want to get the Robert E. Howard Ultimate Edition of the books, you go to the Robert E. Howard Foundation Press website and order them as they come out. And I've done, I think, 7 books that have been published so far. I'm ahead on it. I have more of them in the pipeline. As they get their texts cleaned up and edited and proofread, they pass them on to me, and we get another one in the pipeline. Yeah. So the 3 volumes of the letters are out now, the 3 volumes of the collected poetry, and Steve Harrison, detective, I believe.
Oh, yeah. Great.
Next coming up, I think, is Swords of the North. And I think that's it. We're back to PulpFest.
Do we have time for questions?
Maybe 1 or 2?
Couple?
So any questions? Yes. Yes.
Mark Wheatley, I was interested in hearing you say Kelly Freeze
Yes.
told you he read the stories.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of mid-20th century illustrators for magazines and paperbacks, and almost all of them said they didn't usually read.
And he told me that too. Yeah. And he also told me how he got his artwork back from analog. Yeah, and that's a crazy story because they would throw it all away, and he knew what day the garbage was going out. And he would go in and climb into the dumpster and not only get his artwork, but everybody else's artwork. Wow. Then he'd go up and say hi to John Campbell, hang out with him, go back home and call the other artists and say, "So I've got your stuff, what do you want to trade for it?"
Nice.
Another one, last one. Any questions?
George Hagen.
I was curious, Mark Schultz, how long it took you to do the book?
I think it was about a year. I think it's a year. You know, in the beginning, it's just a matter of I do preliminaries and send them in and wait for a reply and doodle around. And then there's all the time I spent reading and taking notes, too. So it's kind of hard to really quantify, but I'd guesstimate a year.
How many illustrations total?
Well, there were different sizes. There was, 7 paintings. There was 12, I believe, full-page black and white illustrations, and then there was a lot of chapter headers and tags to the story, so it was a mixed bag. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Thanks.
You've been listening to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the Pulp Net, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Learn more about the pulp magazines through articles, blogs, bibliographies, links, over 100 episodes of this podcast, and much more at thepulp.net. Also, look for the PulpNet on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thank you for listening, and keep reading the pulps. This Pulp Event podcast is copyright 2023 by William P. Lampkin. All rights reserved.